you also have you do double work on this. It's like you're a screenwriter and you're a very funny comedic. And actually, it's a nice like the pairing between you and I forgot his name, but
Angus.
Like,
Angus is a great friend of mine from Australia.
And so, what was that kind of a joy to kind of be also hired as a hired gun in the sense to be able to play this? And what is this role for those that haven't seen the film yet? Like, what did they play within the context of this horror scenario?
Right. Well, it was a total joy for me to be able to act in this film. I mean, I love acting. It's funny. Writing is great because you don't need anybody's permission to do it. It's one of the only arts in the film world where you don't have to wait for a bunch of people to call you up and say, begin. You know, as an actor, you're sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. I can't think of anything more torturous. With writing, you don't need anyone's fucking permission. You just get on the computer or pick up a notepad and you start. I love that about writing, and I love writing on spec too. I don't want to write with somebody looking over my shoulder. I just want to sit in my own little world and do it. But it's kind of a lonely profession. You know, you're sitting there at 3 o'clock in the morning on your own, tapping away, and it can be torturous. Acting's a lot more fun. I mean, let's just be realistic about it. You're standing around on set, everyone's offering you, do you need a water? Do you need a coat? Are you cold? As if you know, as if actors have a tendency to get super cold if a breeze starts up. 1,000 people are like, do you need a coat? I mean, it's fun. It's fun to get in front of the cameras. But it's a tough world because it requires a lot of your time, and as I said, you're waiting for that phone call. So what I loved about this was being, as the writer of the film, I was like, you know what? Angus Sampson, who plays the other Ghostbuster guy, great friend of mine from Australia, really well-known actor in Australia. I was like, I'm going to get Angus, bring him over here to the States where people don't know him, people don't know his work like they do in Australia, and have us do our comic repartee. And I hope that it worked. You know, I didn't want to change the tone of the movie. I didn't want to have this movie be a drama about a struggling family dealing with these supernatural events and then suddenly have the Men in Black show up and start tossing out zingers. So hopefully we struck the right balance.
It was the perfect balance, actually.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear.
Really nice, so, being Australian in Hollywood, is there room for you to go back and give back to the Australian film community, or do you feel that this movie is just as much Australian than it is a Hollywood, a US-based kind of production?
That's a really good question. I don't see this as an Australian film. I mean, it's made with an American crew, it's made in the States. I see that there's a big Australian contribution, given that James and I are involved. And Rose and Angus. I am writing a film with Angus that is set in Australia, and that's my Australian project. I really do want to tell Australian stories because that's the language I speak. I mean, you know, you could say, you speak English, we do too, but I didn't grow up with American culture in my bones. What I did grow up with was a dad who was obsessed with Aussie Rules footy, and I used to go down to the local Aussie Rules football club where the guys stand around and watching these local games. Ah, come on, you bastard! Dad would always set me and my brother up on the flat top table Pac-Man machine with like Samboy chips and a red lemonade. I mean, these are probably terms that you're thinking, what the hell? But Australian culture is in my DNA, and it comes naturally to me. It comes more naturally to me to write Australian dialogue than it does American. With American, I'm kind of faking it. I'm appropriating what I think an American might say, but I don't know what's in the souls of Americans. So it is important to tell an Australian story. And it's funny, when I was writing this film with Angus, who plays Tucker in the film, it was the first script I've written that was set in Australia, and I couldn't believe how the dialogue just flowed out, because I knew all these people. And so hopefully you'll be hearing something about that soon. I'd love to come back to Toronto with that film. It's not a horror film, it's like a black comedy, train-spotting-esque, Fargo kind of crime drama-y thing.
Would you want to direct it, or do you feel like is
I don't think so. I'd like to act in it with Angus, and we have a director that is attached to it, and so we're working away on that. So I hope that one day you're interviewing me about that film.
Brilliant.
But that's not to say I'm not having fun making films over in the States. I love the energy of Los Angeles and the way when you have an idea and people hear it, they want to get on board straight away. They want to be a part of it. I love it.